And welcome to the Internal Map of Reality and Introduction to Meditation, Premier 13. Tonight we'll be going through a number of topics. We'll do our 1-minute meditation as normal. Remember that when we do this very quick 1-minute meditation, it's to practice doing longer meditations. And just let it happen naturally. And remember that to stay focused on whatever you choose, if it's a spot in front of you, an object in front of you with your eyes open, or if you have your eyes closed, you're just looking at or looking for the fuzzy dot, that little glowing dot. It doesn't matter really what you're looking at with your eyes open or closed. The important thing is that you stay focused on that until you're interrupted with a thought. And this is where the practice comes in. When you have that thought, it could be, remember now all the modes of thinking, it could be a feeling, it could be an actual words, it could be a movie you're watching, a play, you could be thinking of something you need to do in the future or something that has happened to you in the past, but it's all processing thought. At that moment that you realize that you're actually engaged in some other activity, just politely acknowledge it and very relaxed, very naturally just go back to focusing on your fuzzy dot with your eyes closed or that object you were looking at. And when you're looking at this object with your eyes open or closed, make it a gentle, soft focus. It's not a fixation, as some people would tend to read into that. No, we're not fixating on something. We just need the ability to look with a very gentle gaze, relaxed gaze, and not to block incoming thoughts, just to acknowledge them and go back. Okay, so after you do that detachment practice, we'll go into session 7, part 2 of Introduction to Meditation, part 2 of Conscious Change. A very interesting discussion. Then after that, we'll go right into the Internal Map of Reality, Session 7, a new session, Part 1 of Session 7, Meta Programs. And this is something I'm sure you'll find interesting. And after that, we'll have a brief discussion, Exercise 15, which is a personality test which is related to the use or knowledge of meta programs. So just relax, sit back, get ready for the 1-minute meditation, and enjoy. Hello, and welcome to the Introduction to Meditation, Session 7, Part 2, Conscious Awareness. So we will be going deeper now into the specifics of how to use your conscious awareness for healing and for self-improvement. We could look at someone who's pretty well known, Socrates, and he has credited with this statement: you don't know what you don't know. So this journey that we're on is discovering quite often what we don't know. We might start off thinking that we know enough material to proceed, but in actuality, there's a lot that we need to become aware of, sort of that missing segment, that void. And this leads us into the whole idea that when we are active, we sometimes don't realize that there's two aspects to it. There's what you are consciously aware of, and you could call that the process. So you think that you're doing a specific activity, a process. So you are consciously engaged, consciously engaged with doing a specific set of tasks. So that's the process. But then there is the content. There is the thing that you are actually trying to manipulate or move and so on. And they, in fact, are separate. So the process of whatever you're doing is quite often and can quite often be separated. An example being that if you understand how to work with specific content, that's great. But if you go to a higher level and you understand the process, then the content can vary. And what you'll quite often notice with people is that they're okay as long as the content is familiar. But the moment you change that content, they no longer want to participate or they get uncertain. So what I want you to do is to be comfortable with the process and be comfortable with the content, knowing that ultimately it's the process that has more value because the content will never remain the same. So here's some things that you can consider when you're thinking of process, content, subconscious material. If you are in a peaceful state of mind, then you will know if you are resisting what is. So if you are very calm and you're accepted the process you're going through at the given moment, then it'll allow you to become calm. So not resisting what is. Doesn't mean that you have to agree with what is. It doesn't mean that you have to like what is. But the first step in any kind of change process is accepting where you are at and what it is. Okay? So the next step is to switch from the left brain to the right brain. So if you're in the left brain, you're dealing with the memory and you're dealing with the potential outcome from a future event. But if you're in the right brain, you're in the here and now. What I find that when I meditate, it automatically puts me into a more balanced and right brain mode. When that happens, if I am suffering pain, either physical, emotional, or spiritual, it goes away. So if you find that when you're meditating, your pain goes away, then you may be able to use that as a clue that dealing with your pain is really a matter of switching into a right brain activity. And we'll talk about that later. So if that is the case, if you find that your pain, either your physical, emotional, or spiritual pain goes away when you meditate or when you go into a right brain activity, then that's a good candidate for neutralizing the meaning. So this is where you change whatever it is you're perceiving and move it from an observation that you're associated to something you're dissociated to. So if something is information, just data, you're dissociated. And that's what we were doing in the timeline exercise. So again, you begin the process by just accepting where you are at, accepting whatever it is that you're experiencing. Don't resist it. It is what it is, and accept it, knowing that you will have the power to change it. Then move into a right brain activity. And the easiest way to do that is with the traditional meditation, the detachment meditation. And if you notice that that pain of whatever origin goes away, then you know that you really can neutralize it by changing the meaning and change it from an observation that you are experiencing to just information, change it to just data. Then you can check the polarity of your thought. If you find that you are in one of those moving away from frames of thought where you're saying to yourself, I don't want to do that, I don't want to experience in that, know that the moment you are trying to move away from something, that tends to draw you towards it. So whatever it is you think about, you're going to be drawn towards, right? So why not change the meaning to something you prefer? Okay? So for instance, if you are suffering from a migraine headache or any kind of physical pain, what you want to move towards is the feeling of openness, the feeling of calmness, the feeling of a fresh state. And using the timeline exercise mode, remember a time when you had no pain. Go back to a time when that feeling and imprint that. And that's what you want to move towards. You want to move towards that feeling. So we're talking about conscious thinking here. So when you are in your right brain mode, i.e. not consciously processing past information or consciously generating future possibilities, you're just really processing what you're experiencing. And again, that's if you're doing your Qigong movements or you're doing your traditional meditation. You could be doing your standing posture. That kind of moves you into that right brain mode. And you're going to be processing all 18 of your modes of thinking. And just be aware of those. And be aware that just by observing, just by being aware of whatever it is that you want to heal, just by focusing on it, there's something called the observation effect. And you will, by focusing on it gently, not by focusing on it aggressively, but just by not resisting it, just accepting it in your reality, you will automatically begin to heal. You'll automatically to move from being extremely associated to becoming dissociated, where it will move away from you. And you can help that along with your frames of power frames, right? By analyzing the frame, and in the frame putting whatever it is that you want to overcome, moving that far, 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 far away from, diminishing its brightness, its size, its intensity in the frame. Okay, dissociated from it. And then you can always understand that whatever we are experiencing is real for you. Okay? Whether it's true or not, it will be real, and you will respond to it in your subconscious. So everything is real, but it's not always true. And this is where your meditation, where you begin to differentiate between something that is being generated within you, such as a pain, that you can actually turn off. Okay? You can actually detach from it. Now, when you are into your conscious awareness and you're just allowing yourself to become aware of your reality, and you're aware of something that you need to change, okay? This cybernetic loop, this awareness, this meditative state, this contemplation state is this loop. And every time you loop through awareness of whatever it is in your life that you wish to in some way improve or modify, every time you loop through it, you create this feedback. And every time you go through it, you will gain more information, more knowledge. And the key here is to not resist. Just accept it in there. And then after your meditation, or after a period of time, what I find is I automatically become aware of something I wasn't aware before. And I'll get that, yes, I can do that. Or I can do this. But it's this quiet awareness. There are many, many exercises associated with conscious awareness. And I remember doing this one with when I used to smoke cigarettes. What I did was I took a piece of paper, and every time I had a cigarette, I wrote down the time that I had it and what I was doing. I didn't try to stop smoking. I accepted the fact that I was addicted to cigarettes. But what I did do is I forced myself to become aware every time I had one. Well, what happened after a few days, I would sort of look at this list and say, oh my goodness, I had that many cigarettes. Oh, I had one every time I did this, I did that. And just by being aware of the frequency, the times, and what I was doing, I went from having whatever number of cigarettes it was, I can't remember, down to just having a few, and eventually just stopped. So this conscious awareness is a technique. Note-taking, that's why journal taking is important. It helps to create that feedback loop. You need to get a feedback loop. You have no relationship if you don't have feedback. So here are the sort of top things with conscious change. If you remain conscious and do not turn off, I sometimes think that a lot of the habits we have are a way of turning off ourselves consciously. So if you can remain conscious, do not turn off, right? Stay with it. The result is always positive. The result of conscious change is always consistent. And it's permanent, it persists. When you go through this process and allow the change process to happen naturally, it will be a permanent change. It won't be a here, now, and gone tomorrow change. Quite often what I've found and other people have commented is that after they've meditated and allow their awareness to be used as the primary tool for making change, just being aware, the next step becomes self-evident. You'll reach a point after this, allowing yourself to have this feedback. Maybe you've been keeping a journal. Maybe you don't turn off. You don't go and watch the Netflix show. Just you're not trying to avoid. You're not necessarily trying to encourage pain, but you're not trying to avoid whatever the issue is. And then all of a sudden, the solution will be self-evident, because conscious change is what I call self-adjusting. You will automatically, your body and your spirit and your soul knows how to make the adjustments. After all, we were created from a single cell. The spark of life from a single cell generated who you are today. So this conscious change is what I like to call self-directed. It's you directing the healing. You're not going to someone else. You're not asking me what to do. You're not asking your parents what to do or a best friend. This solution is coming from inside you. It's self-directed. So finally, when you use the conscious change process, and this incorporates using the meditative process and the self-awareness, it's always more resourceful. The outcomes are always more resourceful when you go these steps. So that's pretty much the key, that when you use the conscious awareness process, you will always be okay with your life. You'll be okay knowing your state of mind. There won't be any state of mind that you try to avoid. You won't resist what is. You'll accept what is, and whether it's ultimately good or bad for you in terms of whatever health, financial, whatever it is, you're not going to resist it. You're going to accept it. You're going to accept the outcome. And it's only then can you make an adjustment. So being okay about your decision means that you have no regrets. Even if you did the wrong thing, it was your decision and you accept the consequences. Sometimes doing nothing is the best decision. And to wait until you have that moment, that aha moment, when you can say, that's what I should do. You don't always have to have an answer. You can say, let me think about it. If you've ever done that, if the answer isn't self-evident, then just take a deep breath and say, I need to think about that more. You need to process it more. You need to just keep it in your awareness and maybe just do a gentle meditation where you're not trying to force anything. As I said, the solution is always self-evident. Now, this self-healing process is a holistic one, which is why you do a very gentle detachment type meditation where you're not trying to force an outcome. It's the balance between all the aspects of your life. When you do this conscious awareness through meditation, you're going to approach what I like to call the threshold of change. And at that point, you have a decision to make, whether to go through the threshold or to not go through the threshold. If your conscious awareness takes you to what is self-evident that says, I really need to do this, but you're not ready to do it. You get a pushback. You don't want to go through that threshold, right? You've got a choice. You can do that. You can choose not to. Now, the next part, we'll be looking at conscious change. Now, at this point, you can do your meditations. You can do your standing or sitting postures. You can do your initial Qigong movements, do your traditional meditation, and work with your power frames. All of these methods will keep you in your right brain, because you need to be in your here and now brain, not dwelling on the past and not being concerned about the future. There is a time that you need to think of the past, and there is a correct time to think of the future. But when you're trying to work through something, doing a gentle Qigong meditation or a traditional meditation is really what you need to do. And remember that the quality of these meditations is that they're always soft, always slow, always accurate, with your full attention. So, if you're doing the movements or you're doing a traditional meditation, always remember the posture position with your head over your shoulders, shoulders over your hips, feet flat on the floor, and your hands, I recommend keeping your hands on your thighs. That allows your shoulders to relax even more. And if I haven't mentioned it to date, keep your jaw relaxed. You can even keep your mouth partly open. So what we'll be doing next, we'll be doing something called chaos and reorganization. And what is that? When you reach that threshold point, when it's self-evident what you know the change should be for your personal healing, be it on the physical or be it on the emotional or be it on a spiritual level. When you know and it becomes self-evident and you're at that threshold, here's what's going to happen. So we're going to talk about the chaos and reorganization phase of when you walk through the threshold. So going through the threshold, you will experience chaos and reorganization, but that's to be expected. So knowing what to expect is important. So that's it for conscious awareness. It gives you an idea of how to proceed. Try the meditations. Remember that the meditations will keep you in your right brain. Okay, there are other right brain exercises that you can do. You can just, go online and search for them. But if you're trying to heal, you need to be in the right brain. Then if that process helps you either solve the pain, then you can fix it right away by changing the meaning, by working with your power frames. And if it doesn't, it will give you an alternative. It will give you the next step. It will take you to the threshold of a change that you have to do even more of a change. Okay, so we'll continue on with our next segment 8, in the next session. Thank you for joining. Welcome to the Internal Map of Reality, Session 7, Part 1, Metaprograms. So today we'll be taking a deeper look at metaprograms. Now, metaprograms are special, and you'll find them referenced under different names if you do some searching around the internet. But it's related to something that we've been talking about all along, which is called filters. So I'll be sort of highlighting that for you as we go through this. Now, here is a quote attributed to a person by the name of Buddha. And the quote goes like this: "The mind is everything. What you think, you become." So this quote is I think appropriate when we're talking about metaprograms, because we're talking about the way that you perceive yourself in your environment determines your behavior, and this is what we're looking at. Okay, so far we've covered 6 different topics. We've looked at what a map is. We've looked at modes of thinking. We talked about your belief systems. Talked about filters, which is related to metaprograms. Then we talked about your timeline and how to heal it. And we talked about values and your values, how your values become basically the rule book for your map. Very important to have your values well defined and sorted. Now you can change them, but it's very important to have clearly internalized values. So today we're looking at metaprograms. We've got the standard resources. I won't bother going through this. I'll leave the screen up for a bit, but basically you have access to the previous videos, and you can get more information on our Facebook page, NSTCMA. If you wish to contact me, it's sdo2015@protonmail.com. And, please, reach out. There's no problem. Or if you're a Patreon, you can just message me. So when we're talking about metaprograms, what are we going to be doing? So we're going to be going through these general topic areas. We're going to just a general description of what a metaprogram is and why it's important. We'll talk about something called content-free. Content-free learning is another way of looking at it. We can learn, but it's not necessarily associated with any particular content. It's more process. And then we'll look at a very common example, the introvert-extrovert. And we'll look at how it's a continuum between being extrovert and introvert, and how I want you to be flexible to use whatever range you need for what you need to accomplish at any given time, flexibility. And then we'll look at some more examples, such as moving towards people who see things as a necessity, and then people who look for the sameness in things, and then people who look at the global picture. So we'll be looking at those as some of the examples. And then we'll end this up by looking at a test that you can take for your personality type. Now remember, this is just a snapshot. We're not carved in concrete or in stone. This is what we want to be able to do through understanding our internal map, how to make adjustments. Here's some terms that we probably should be familiar with at the end of this. So the idea of content-free environments or learning or experiences or knowledge, content-free knowledge. The idea that life is a continuum and where you fit at any given time is range. And then the whole idea of a meta program, understand its power and how you can use it. So what is a meta program? Basically, it's one of these filters, but it's an elaborate filter. It's a filter that has many dimensions and a huge impact on your day-to-day life. So it's like putting on a pair of sunglasses, and for some people, you never take them off. What I'd like you to be able to do is take off sunglasses and put clear glasses or rose-colored glasses or whatever color filters you need to see better at any given time. As I mentioned, it's content-free, so a filter doesn't worry about what it's filtering, it just filters. It's the process of what it does. As I mentioned, it's a continuum. So here you can see that an example of a filter where people who see things that are the same or people who are kind of leaning towards things that are different. Now, if you can think of maybe yourself or someone you know, that's the way they process things. If they see something, they will say, oh yeah, I know that, that's familiar too, that's whatever. Or the person or you might say, oh, here's the differences. Here's why this is different from me or from that previous experience. I want you to be flexible. How does this work? So you have a filter and it's content free. So the filter is a formula, a process. Okay. So the process is not really concerned about what it's processing. It's more concerned about how to process. So we get the similar result. Now, one big lesson I've learned in my life is that when I was able to accomplish something because I knew the what, I knew what to do, okay? And that was great, and I had some great success. But then I found it difficult to apply that success in other situations because I was so focused on the what. So if the circumstances weren't specifically lined up the way they were in the past, I couldn't do it. It wasn't until I began to focus on the process. Now, if you understand the how, if you understand the process, then you can implement this anywhere, anytime, with anything, with anyone. Right? If you understand the process. So quite often I've been able to work with people and help them not understanding anything about what it is they needed to heal. I was just helping them understand how they can process it. So this is a tremendous flexibility. So if you are more a process-oriented person and looking at the formula, then you become very flexible. So it doesn't matter what you're processing, you can adjust your formula or your process to handle it and get, consistent results. So here's a common example that and I think most people are familiar with, the introvert. So the introvert has an internal frame of reference. Everything they do, everything they experience will be reinterpreted internally based on themselves. So this is referred to as an internal frame of reference. As opposed to the extrovert who's constantly looking for interaction with outside people. Their frame of reference is external. They always need to associate what they're feeling internally with what they're experiencing with the outside world and people. Now, in my line of work, there are times I need to be inter-reflective and introverted and internal frame of reference when I'm planning these presentations, when I'm doing this work, when I'm meditating, I go internal. But then when I'm working with people, I'm out teaching or running a workshop or a class, I need to be external, I need to be extroverted and reach out to people and interact. So this is that flexibility I was referring to. Now, it's quite possible that when I go internal and doing sort of a more introvert kind of cleansing or working, I'm using the same process, the same techniques that I would use if I'm interacting with a group. So this is where your skills can be transported. Now, this is what we are referring to now as a continuum. So you will be on a range from extrovert to introvert. So you might say on the left-hand range, this is extremely introvert, and on the other end, the right side, you would be extremely extrovert. So you can place yourself anywhere from the midpoint to any range that you need to be. Now, for most people, this happens automatically, and it tends to be rigid. For most people, they will sometimes be called an extrovert or sometimes be called an introvert. So the skill comes in, can the person who likes to be extrovert and reaching out and communicating and interacting with people, can that person be quiet in a group? Can that extrovert go and slide down the scale and actually be quiet and perceptive and perceiving more introspective than outwards respective? So this is this flexibility. So how can you do this? Now, you can do it with your power frames. But the first thing that I'd like you to think about when we look at these meta programs, there's nothing right or wrong about any of them. They only become more valuable or less valuable, less resourceful when you are using them in the inappropriate situations. So it's situational irrelevant. So there are times you need to be extroverted, and there are times you need to be introverted. So let's look at some of these meta programs that I would like you to have the flexibility of using. So here's a few of them, and believe me, there are many. And if you go online, and I'm using an example from the neurolinguistic programming modules, they have a list, 60 or somewhat. But we only need to look at a few of them, because once you understand how they work, then you can basically find them on your own. I think I indicated this when we were talking about filters before. You can find filters and understand that they're just a tool. So let's look at these. So we've already been talking about the person who likes to move towards or the person who likes to move away. And you can think of yourself this way. Are you the type of person who likes to avoid things and move away from them? Or are you the type of person who's drawn to new activities and so on? And you can see this in a group. Some people will be the first to jump into the pool, and others will be the ones to hold back. Then there are these people who tend to look at any situation in terms of the possibilities. So you might have an example of this would be someone who would say, oh, we can't do that because of this thing. We need to have this in order to do this particular experience. And other people would say, well, okay, we don't have X, Y, Z, but here's some other ways that we can do this. We can look at all the many possibilities. Another interpretation of this is the person who goes through a challenging experience. Some people take a challenging experience and see it as a way of looking at all the ways that they can overcome that barrier or blockage or challenge. People who are moving down now to sameness, people who see the sameness in things and are looking for things that are the same, versus people who are looking for differences. Now, this happens automatically. If you pay attention, if you're talking with yourself or some other people, if you're just being introspective, watching yourself, but you can watch it in groups, that might be easier too. Some people will automatically be drawn to things that are the same, and other people will be drawn to things that are different. Will always be looking for, a different experience, or recognizing what's different about things. There's some interesting tests you give someone, and they'll look at it and, what's different between these two pictures. And some people will tell you all the things that are the same between those two pictures, and another person will very easily tell you the differences. Here's the one I like, global versus specific. And I like playing with this. This is the one where I was talking about being able to crunch up or crunch down. Some people are kind of locked into a global perspective. Whenever they see something, they tend to take it high level. Whereas other people get caught up in the details, get caught up in the minute details of things. And we've already talked about people who have an external frame of reference and those that have an internal. And then this is an interesting one, where people interpret their experience based on what they themselves are experiencing or what others are experiencing. And those people who like to help others quite often could fall into this group. They're more looking at the impact on others around them. So I could go on, we could talk about this, and hopefully we'll have a chance to do some live discussions about these. I've been talking with Rose, and we're just trying to figure out a good time to do some live streams, which we will do. And we're going to go back over this materials, but in a different way, in a different format. So there's been an attempt to group these into personality types, right? And I know when I was doing a lot of sales studying, they get you to identify the personality type of the person you're trying to sell. And then based on the personality type, right, you then approach them, okay? This isn't why I want you to be able to do this test. There's a self-test I like to recommend that you take. I'll put the link to this test in the comments section, okay? And I will email it to you if you're Patreon. Okay, so you can just go here and run the self-test, and what it will do is it will give you a reading of where you fit on these different personality types and a description of them. And remember, these are all meta programs. They're not saying this is the way you are forever. And in fact, you might find at different stages in your life, if you run the same test, that you will get a different score. You will come with a different personality type based on your situation. So have fun with it. Don't be too tied up into it. Don't overthink it. Just relax, enjoy the test, and just respond very openly and freely to the questions. So that, in fact, is your exercise. I believe we're at exercise 15 now, is the self-test. And again, it's in the link for this site is in the description, and I will email it to people in the Patreon. Again, the quote from Buddha, "The mind is everything. What you think, you will become." So have fun with it. Do the test. If you have any issues finding the site or doing the test, just contact me and I'll give you a hand with it. And we'll see you in the next session. Well, I hope you enjoyed the session tonight. All very useful information. And been having some communications with Rose. She's doing a lot better. And we're now just working out times that we can get together and do some live streams. Now let's talk about the exercise associated with this, exercise 15. Now what I'm going to be asking you to do is to go to a website where the Myers-Briggs test is available there. It should be for free, and it's no problem. Just follow the test. And this will break it out into the 16 different personality types that they've identified. And it's kind of interesting. I think you'll find it enjoyable. Again, any of these personality types, they're not carved in stone. This is where you are at this given point in time, knowing that if you research these different personality types, there's some combinations, right? Some combinations of these meta programs that will be advantageous for you depending on what you need to do. So feel free, visit this site, and the description or the link to this site is in the description. Enjoy, and then we'll be having some follow-up discussion on this. Okay, we'll see you in the next session.